Oh God, we're going to be part of some kind of a traffic court case now because Stephen Howell, who is joining us, is coming in by dash cam. Okay, Stephen Howell works in Microsoft. HoloLens is a big deal. It looks like he's parking, so he might join the real conversation. What do you understand about the HoloLens yourself, Colin? Have you seen it or used it before?
I've never used it. I've seen it. I can only imagine what it does, really.
Okay. Stephen Howell showed up walking and not talking yet. He's looks like he's wearing a brown coat.
I know a lot of money is going into it, and it's seen as the future.
Yeah, I'm sure it means more. It's lighter and probably has better resolution and other options, just performance options. So I don't know what differentiates two from one, but your question there, Colin, you're asking. So if you're taking the perspective of an angel investor.
Yeah.
What would be the sales pitch about it? What line of industry might
where's the smart money going is really the question. Okay. I suppose the people that get, I suppose, when you have an expert there, you want to know where's this going. Where should you put your money?
Okay, now, but I couldn't hear you before then.
Oh, okay, good. We can hear you. When you get to it, if you think you get, my God, you're taking us into Microsoft. Security guy jumps out at me whenever I do this, trying to have a camera phone run in. So wow, you guys are seeing. I think this is this one Microsoft place, Stephen. Is that where you are?
Yeah.
Okay. So guys, this is what we would have had my leg not been oozing, and more than 6 or 7 people had said they wanted to go. Wow. A performance space, as well as a meeting space, as well as an eating place.
Our lecture room's over there.
Okay. How many floors, Stephen?
6. 2 are just parking and gyms and things like that, and 4 are office space.
Okay. And where are you headed now?
I'm headed up to the education suite.
Okay. Right. Just to let you know, I've got people here: Rafael, Dominica, Colin, Troy, Ryan, Richard, Rachel, room 115, which is the room I'm sitting in, Mark, Trevor, and Fabian. Stephen, I'll let it up to you when you're comfortable. Just give us a quick little pitch about you in your role and maybe 5 years ago what that role was back then.
Well, I'm Stephen Howell. I'm the academic lead at Microsoft Ireland, and my job is to work with third level lecturers and students and primary and secondary teachers in every college and school on the island of Ireland. And I do lots of other things as well, but that's the role I'm speaking to you as. And the other thing, before that, I used to be a computing lecturer.
Okay. The question that was queued up, where do you see HoloLens being most important in industry space?
I don't know where it's most important, but it's only pitched really at a small number of industries where it sells as a tool. Most people look at HoloLens and they see a gaming device, because if you buy a virtual reality headset, that's generally what it's put at, gaming. And we don't see the HoloLens as a gaming device in any way. Currently, it's heavily used in manufacturing, in training, in industry, and in frontline workers who have to wear one, and they're connected back in real time to an expert who can see what they see and can see what they're looking at. And that's very different from what a game designer or a game developer would think of when they look at a virtual reality headset. So a large part of the job is explaining to people that we're not positioning this in gaming in any way, because no one in the right mind would sell a $5,000 gaming controller. The opportunity for gaming and virtual reality, I think, would be big, but I don't think HoloLens is the product that we would place in that space.
Okay.
So there would be manufacturing, industrial training, architecture, building, all sorts of things that the students and myself, yourself, probably aren't amazingly interested in. The military is not a separate industry. If the military buys a product off you and goes off and does something with it, then there's two aspects there. One, you're using a platform which manufacturing, the military, whoever it is, can buy and build upon. The other aspect is if you make software specifically for a particular industry. So as an example, years ago, we used to make software for cars, and Ford would buy that software and their car entertainment system. Mm-hmm. Now, you're making a very specific decision to make software for the automobile manufacturing industry. And if the alternative would be, if we didn't do that, someone might say, well, we're going to buy whatever it is, Windows, and install it and use it in this way. Now, on one side of this, we are choosing the industry to make the product for, then you have an interesting scenario where you can be very specific about what you want that software to do. On the other side, this is the way we usually are, we just make a platform and we sell that, and some people take it and they build software to do things that we didn't envision to be used for. In some cases, they did to build software that we expected them to do. So for example, we make Visual Studio, which is a tool that lets people write their own programs. It's very popular with writing software. You can write software to do just about anything, and anything that software can do. We can't predict all the use cases it would be used for. So we sell the platform, and the tool. We don't necessarily develop software for any particular industry. Will HoloLens be used for military? I imagine so, but I don't know much about the military, what they might use it for.
Stephen, I have a follow-up question for you about the Visual Studio. Are you actually working with any second-level schools that have implemented Visual Studio in their curriculum and transition year or student projects?
Not in transition year, but for computer science for the Leaving Cert. However, we wouldn't really position it there. There is a community edition for open source software, which is popular with certain second level students, but generally we would position Visual Studio Code instead, because we would see secondary schools where you should be doing introductory Python, and we have two main products. Well, we have three for Python, but at second level we have two, and they would be Visual Studio Code, which is free, open source editor available on Linux, Mac, and Windows, and it lets you do Python very easily. And then the other one would be Azure Notebooks, which lets you develop for Python all online. You don't need to install anything.
Okay. I'm trying to get some people to unmute, so I'm just going to ask a question for Fabian. Basically, it's what might be behind you on a bookshelf, Stephen, or specifically, if someone were going to work in a job as an intern with you, would you expect certain kind of a flow of learning to be already established in the books they have read? So specifically, you have a book that you think that somebody ought to read if they intend to join up with the Microsoft side of the workforce. How about give me a title?
Well, there's a number of angles on that. The first one would be, no, I wouldn't expect you to read any particular book. However, I do read a lot of books. I have asked them to put a bookshelf in this room. I actually asked them to put it over there, but they haven't put it in yet for me. And it would really depend on what job I would hire that intern to do. So I've just hired an intern, and she's going to be working with me from August this year. And
okay.
Is a primary school pupil. And the intern that I had last year went to UL and did business and marketing, I think.
Okay.
But the fact that I don't actually know what he studied exactly shows how relevant what he studied is to what we do. And there's nowhere you can actually study to do what we do, because we do a very unusual thing. But that said, most people coming here are interns in business or software development. And I'm sure they read all the important, relevant businessy and software development books. But I actually think most students don't read at all. And this is not a particular comment on any of the students who are on this course. Most students don't read. And I would actually just be happy if they'd read any book, not necessarily a particular book. But if you do read, I would say that it's important that reading is not done just for the learning. I mean, I have had managers suggest I read books that are traditional businessy books. So if you're coming to work in a place like Microsoft, it would be smart to read Hit Refresh, which our new CEO wrote there last year. And it's a very interesting book about the positive changes in what we do in Microsoft. It's quite interesting. It's Satya Nadella. The other thing I would say is that if I was coming to work at Microsoft as a software engineer, I would read Showstopper, which is a really, really interesting book Windows NT developed. And I can't remember who wrote it, but I have a feeling Zachary might be in their name somewhere. And then there's a lot of interesting books you can read if you're going into a startup world. In terms of game design and game development world, I used to be a lecturer in that. Excellent books I read on the topic that I can pick out offhand. But I wouldn't actually read a lot of what's written about how certain games were designed and the design process. So games with a very strong design aesthetic that I would pick out, that if I could find a book about these, for instance, Dishonored series and Prey series obviously have similar visual designs and reuse a lot of similar assets. And I would say if you were to take those as an example and say, you know, what is the process they used? Can we learn more about their thought process and art process? I'd be quite happy if you read that, whether it was in a traditional book or not. But I think it's important to read for fun, and an awful lot of people don't, or the last thing they ever read was Harry Potter. And if you don't read for fun, that's fine. But I would consider reading certain books, like, for example, if you're interested in any way in Bitcoin and that type of area. There was a book written so long ago before Bitcoin that a lot of people think the author might be Satoshi, and that's Cryptonomicon by Neil Stephenson, which is just an incredible book to read in itself. And then there's lots of other books I would recommend just for how they make you think. They can be entertaining. It helps if you like science fiction and those type of books, but these books are an interesting take on our modern technology world, which I think Stevenson does very
well. In terms of Dishonored and Prey you're just discussing, what particular areas of the process would you focus on?
Well, I'm not sure if they've published anything from, I know they published something on the sound and music design. I think their composer died in between the second and third game, I think. But what I would say is that when there's a distinctive aspect of any particular game or series, for instance, be it the sound, the direction, whatever it is, it can be interesting to learn from either the developer diaries or the making of type productions. And they're quite rare sometimes, which is a pity, because I think as an industry and a society, we tend to hide away from learning about what went wrong. And you'll sometimes get an amazing documentary about what went wrong in some big, huge game undertaking or something like that. But I think there's actually quite a lot to be learned, especially by students and the industry as a whole, by analyzing the challenges of making these huge productions, which you can read an awful lot about what went wrong making a movie and how to do it right. We're still in quite a young industry with, say, games. So if you look at Dishonored and Prey, I don't know whether they had a single brilliant individual who set the aesthetic tone. So, for example, in Dishonored, which is set in some sort of steampunk-ish alternate Victorian era, I guess you would say, on a world that's very like Earth but may not be Earth, I don't know. The cultural design, everyone wears trousers. There's no skirts. And at first you don't notice that playing the game, but you notice later on that is common throughout the world. And it becomes this is something that's different, that makes the world stand out. But also everyone's hands are oversized. The models are perfectly proportioned except for the hands, which is unusual, but you begin to notice it after a while. And it actually, at first you think they're just bad at making models, and then you begin to see it's an aesthetic choice. So when you make an aesthetic choice, is it done as a team? Is it done as something that we want people to recognize about the series or the game? Or is it just something that happened by fluke? So I'm interested in how teams and games in particular end up with not necessarily the game mechanics, because you can sometimes see how they were carefully created to produce a particular thing, like the gravity gun in Half-Life or portals in Portal, and there's lots of other examples. But when it's something as simple as the way the clothes the characters wear, or the proportions of, you know, the objects in the world, or whatever it is, that's interesting, and I think it makes a difference. And these games, they may not have sold as well as I'd like, but critically they were acclaimed. So I think there's a lot to be learned from things like that.
I think you're onto something, all right, with just the fact that, like when you mention how their hands are out of proportion, that they probably have that same aesthetic design going through the rest of their, even like their level design and stuff. Just that it's more like how someone sees the world rather than what it actually is like. Because, you know, if you ask somebody to draw themselves or draw a person, they'll often make the eyes bigger and they'll often make the hands bigger, just because that's kind of what you focus on.
Yes, and I don't know the thought process behind it, so I think that would be an interesting thing. I don't know if they've published that, but I was noticing...
Proper read of this then.
I was noticing how Prey and Dishonored had a similar design, and I know it's the same team. Well, was it the same designer, or were they saving money on assets? You know? Like at one point you'll notice a character walks around in Prey. Their idle animation is a copy and paste of the idle animation of a guard in Dishonored. Why is that? Well, it probably saved a lot of money. Do you need to record a person, mocap a person just walking around looking bored? Probably not, but you know, let's copy and paste this one. But you remember when there was a minor scandal, and I probably get the games wrong, and I apologize if I do, but I think it was Shadow of Mordor or Shadow of War, looked like it had copied a climbing animation from Assassin's Creed for possibly some other one. And there was a bit of a scandal with that, and it was, I think it was explained the way it was copy and paste. But I can't remember when things like that happen. You have to ask, is this because game development, especially AAA game development, is quite difficult and assets will be reused and it saves money? Or is it a case of, well, we're borrowing an awful lot from this team? You know?
Yeah, well, I guess it's kind of both, in the sense that, you know, you still have to make a decision on what to put in and what you're going to reuse from something else. So it's still an aesthetic decision on that, or whether or not it fits. And if it doesn't fit, then you would sort of redo it probably.
So I think you learn a lot from reading or watching or whatever way they publish it about their design process.
Procedural asset creation, I think it was.
Well, there was a game many years ago called Outcast, I think. And it used an unusual type of, I think it was voxel terrain generation. And I think procedural generation for helping the developers build an immersive world by random generation, which they make a final decision and save it, that's been a tool used for a long time. I think when it's integral parts of the game, so every game you play is different, I think that's more interesting and a harder challenge to code, but not impossible. And what I'm very interested in is games where you still have a narrative which anyone can play and get help with if they're stuck. Sorry,
go on.
So a few years ago, when I was a teenager, there was a game that came out called Another World. And Another World was a French game, had an amazing art design. It's recently been re-released. I think I buy it on every platform it's re-released on.
What was the name, sorry?
Another World.
Another World, oh yeah.
It had another name, which I forget. But anyway, it and in America, I think it had a different name as well. But in Another World, the level design is so exact everywhere that you can play the game blindfold, and everything always happens in the same order, in the same place. And I'm sure there's other games like it, but this one springs to mind as, and I bought the game on Xbox when it re-released and remastered, and I downloaded it and played it and completed it straight through in one go. And you can do it very quickly if you know where everything is. And it was still an amazing gaming experience, but at no point did anything unexpected happen? And when you play a game where, for instance, open world games where the unexpected things happen because you make different decisions, it's different from procedural generation where, you know, when you open this door, anything could be in here because here's all the... And it's the same for a lot of games where there's a huge amount of procedurally generated terrain. This is why I mentioned, I think, Outcast, but actually there's only one path you should really go. And if you go that path, you won't notice any of the procedural generated content. And I'd say there's a fair game where they advertise billions of combinations of weapons or whatever it is, but in reality you're going to go for the weapon with the most damage and most ammo or whatever it is. You know?
Yeah.
So the Borderlands has 1 trillion guns, but most of them you wouldn't actually use.
Yeah, when I spoke about procedural generation, I meant more along the lines of asset creation. So with procedurally generating buildings and stuff like that.
Yeah,
do you
that's
think
what I mean by
that will slowly take over from handcrafted asset creation?
That's what I mean by terrain, and there are a lot of companies that claim you can go into every building in this virtual city, but they're all just assets randomly placed in the room. I don't really do that. What I'm more counting is procedurally creating dungeons and the challenges in them. So a lot of games do that, but I would say a bigger challenge is making it interesting and narratively relevant. So the Diablo series of games, do you know Diablo? There's I think there's a clone called Torchlight. So I never understood those games. I downloaded Torchlight because everyone was talking about it, and I thought, okay, I'll try it. And you just keep doing the same thing again and again and again. Just click on these bad guys, and that's it. You know, I couldn't see anything to it. I couldn't understand. Maybe there's a hidden depth in this game. And when I tried asking that to people who are fans, but you know, what is it about this game? I just click on these guys. Do I do anything else? They got quite offended because no, this is an amazing game. But what do you actually do in this game? You don't figure out anything. You don't solve anything. You just click these guys. Is that it? Or is there more happening later on that I just haven't gotten to yet? And they had no answer for that. So there's something to be said for a procedurally generated game where you see new things all the time. But I think that as a tool to aid the level designer who is making informed narrative decisions about what the game should look like, that's far more interesting. So yes. I think you'll make a lot more money, if you don't mind me saying so, making tools to help other people make games than you will making any game. The chances of your game becoming a AAA overnight success that, you know, you get handed a huge golden check and told, off you go now and make your next game, are low. Your chances of making a good living making tools to help other people make games is a fair bit higher. Now, that may be disappointing if you say, well, I don't necessarily want to do that, but think about this. You can make the assets for one game, and maybe you're amazing at making, I don't know, dragons. And you make an amazing dragon asset for one game, and they own that asset. And if you want to make another asset, well, you have to make a completely new asset. And you can use your ideas, but you can't use any of your content for the next customer. And that's tough. It doesn't matter how good the game is. It's one paycheck. The other angle could be that you make an amazing asset which is very configurable and procedurally generated dragons with, say, you know, a number of sliders for how many scales or whatever it is they have. And you sell it in the Unity asset store. And the people who buy it may never make it into a game. You might never ever see any of those dragons in a game. But you're still being paid every time they buy it anyway. And, you know, right now, your goal may be, and this is the goal of a lot of graduates, to have a number of publishing weeks under your belt. And that's a great goal, and you should aim for that. There's another goal later on, which will be to pay your mortgage and put your 4 kids like me through college. And that's a different goal. And sometimes using the skills you've created to help other people make games might bring in more money than trying to have that one hit game.
Sure.
Yeah, that's interesting actually, and especially when it comes to, you know, I find procedure generation pops up a lot in discussions between people who are just casually into games, and that you know, a lot of them do kind of write off procedural generation because they only notice the really bad examples that are very repetitive. But like on that note, what is your like, do you have any thoughts about what the actual perception of games is like nowadays?
So public who play games, the perception of those people, or the
Yeah.
perception of public? Oh,
Sorry,
So-
the perception of like how do people who play games view games?
well, they probably don't think very much about games. Most people claim not to be gamers, yet will play Bejeweled or Solitaire on their phone.
Yeah.
They would not class themselves as a gamer. Now, we might class them very snootily as casual gamers, but it doesn't matter whether they're casual or core or whatever you want to call it, gamers. If someone's, they do a survey, Ireland, let's take radio as an example. Ireland's a rather unusual country. Our radio listenership is higher than most countries in Europe and the world. Why? No one knows why. But if you ask people, do they listen to the radio, they will say no. Most people will say
in
no.
your car.
But they
most people have to drive in Ireland, I guess.
Yeah, but you ask those people, they say, no, I don't listen to the radio. And then you say,
Okay.
but do you listen in your car? And they go, oh yeah, I listen in the car, obviously.
Right.
But you never listen any other time. Do you listen when you're cooking the dinner? Well, yeah, I have the radio on when I'm cooking the dinner, but like I don't listen to the radio. And then you say, do you listen to talk radio? No, I never listen to talk radio. I listen to music. Okay. But, you know, what music radio stations do you listen to? Oh, none of them. I listen to Spotify or iTunes or whatever it is. Okay. So do you ever listen to talk radio hosts like News Talk or Ryan Tubridy or Joe Duffy? Oh yeah, I listen to them every day. So wait a minute, you don't listen to talk radio, but you hear these guys every day. So people's perception of their engagement with a media is very skewed. If you say to someone, do you play games? No, games are for kids. I don't play games. Okay, but have you ever played Fortnite? Yeah, I play Fortnite. I'm up every night playing. Wait a minute, so you don't play games to play Fortnite? Yeah, but I'm not like a gamer. I'm just playing Fortnite. Okay, but that is a game. But I suppose it's a game, yeah, but like I don't really play games because what people, when you ask someone to listen to the radio, you're really asking them to make a value judgment about themselves. And it's the same with playing games. And Ireland's an unusual society. We have a very skewed view of what is an acceptable social activity. And an acceptable social activity is to drink far more alcohol than is medically advised, and to be completely, absolutely wasted when you're a student, and to be completely incapable of doing anything the next day. And that is perfectly socially acceptable. To say I stayed up all night playing games, I'm a bit tired now, people react terribly. So if you went into college and you said to Bernie, I'm sorry, I just went on the lash last night. I had 7 points and I can't see where I'm going right now. And he would say, you probably shouldn't overdo it. You should probably go and sleep that off and come back to college when you're capable. If you come in and say, Bernie, I stayed up all night playing a game, he would say, well, that was very foolish use of your time. So it's, it's funny. I'm not picking on Bernie, it's just he's the lecturer today. So it's funny that we have in Ireland, and in other countries I don't see this. In other countries you can say without shame, I'm a gamer, and people won't look at you funny. In Ireland, that's a funny one. So in our house is unusual. My wife plays as many games as I do. I play a lot of games. We have I have 4 kids. We all play an awful lot of games. I don't see any harm in any of the games we play. They're all age appropriate, and they're all, games that I think are wholesome and acceptable. We don't do any online games really, and I don't really think anyone should anywhere, but it's very popular with some people. And when I meet people who know nothing about games and consider it a childish activity, I don't even try the common one gamers do, which is to say, well, do you watch did you go see Avengers Endgame? And everyone goes, oh yeah, I go see all the Marvel movies. And did you go see Star Wars movie? Oh yeah. Well, Grand Theft Auto in its first week made more money than all of the Oscar winners that year combined. So therefore, is it a real medium? There's a lot more people who have spent a lot more hours in any Grand Theft Auto game than watching all of the Oscar movies. Them individually will not have done. You can't argue that with some people. Some people will go, oh yeah, I never realized just so much goes into making games and it's a bigger industry than watching movies. But then there's a lot who will go, yeah, it's just for kids. I don't do any of that. And I don't let my kids do it either. So my kids are now social outcasts because I don't allow them to play games. And they see that as a positive thing. And I think there's a huge benefit from allowing people to consume media that they enjoy. Now, I don't agree with YouTubers and people playing game and watching them play it because I don't find that enjoyable. But my kids love it. I don't understand it, but I don't stop them doing it just because I don't like it. And I usually compare it to watching football. I would never do that or any other sport, but lots of people like doing it. I do worry about them, but I'm not going to stop them doing it. And it's the exact same thing with watching YouTubers play games. I'd rather play the game myself, but if you want to watch them, I guess it's like watching a football game. Not something I would ever do or have ever done, but I can understand why people do it. So I think we need to take a more accepting view of like playing games. And the reason playing games and the perception of it is so negative is because people associate the negative aspects of technology in their life with all technology. So someone bullies me on social media, my phone is bad. No one made you go into that app and engage with that social media, but you got through it. So if you see a scary movie and it upsets you, you don't blame your TV. It didn't make you watch it. Yet we still have that the Xbox is bad. No. You can do a lot of different things with your Xbox, PlayStation, and Switch. They don't have to be negative experiences, but blaming the device because you witnessed a negative experience is a very common thing. So until we get to the point where, we're laughing at the idea that rock and roll music used to give people mental illnesses, which is something that was quite common in 50s and 60s. We don't believe that anymore. Punk music was the big baddie in the 80s. No one cares about it anymore. It's old people's music now. I'm not sure what the bad music is nowadays. You guys could probably tell me. Right now we're at this medium is bad because I don't understand it. And it'll be 10 years before we even begin to get to this medium's not that bad.
Yeah. And actually, like on that note, do you think does the industry have an image problem for the public? I suppose the last generation and the changing shifts that have been happening when it comes to monetization and
I think that's just
online. And
I think the public who don't game have no awareness that it even exists.
Mm.
So I don't have a big concern about the dangers of electronic dance music to people with epilepsy because I don't know anything about electronic dance music.
Yeah.
So I don't care. And if someone said, are you worried about drug use in football? No, I don't watch football. I don't care. If they take drugs, good for them. Is it the people watching it or the people playing it? I don't know. I don't care. So most people treat games like that. That's something kids do. I don't care. People like me who are lecturers on it and like making games and like teaching how to make games and like now work in Xbox divisions, we have a different view, which is you if you're providing a platform, there's only a few different platforms. On PC you have Steam and there's a new one now, Epic, and there's I forget the names of them. You know the ones I'm talking about. And there's the consoles, and there's also Android and iOS. They're usually just providing a platform, and the games that get made often, the quality control and the suitability is usually given to a third party. But the age standards and all those, they are very much self-certifying. So when you submit your game to be verified by an age rating board, you have to tell them all the hidden Easter eggs so that someone playing the game normally might find. And you can't say, oh, well, what you didn't know was if you did this thing, it was getting to this terribly gory level, which is not suitable for my age 3 My Little Pony game. It's a My Little Pony Walking Dead crossover, but you didn't think any of the 4-year-olds would get there, so we didn't tell you about it. You're not allowed to do that. You have to be upfront about the My Little Pony Walking Dead crossover up front. Now, the issue there is that leads some people to say, well, I want to get a lower age rating so more people will play my game. And that might be because they want more people to play their game. But it also might be because there's going to be monetized advertising and there's going to be monetized content. And they want a younger player who doesn't necessarily have the ability to say, do you know what, I'm not paying for that My Little Pony chainsaw because it costs €5. I don't need it, you know. And they start bugging Mammy for it, and that this is a very violent game that's not suitable. So when you offload that to a third party and it's self-verification, effectively you're saying there's nothing bad in my game, I swear. It's not like they have the time or the ability to play all the games to find out. So you have to be very careful if you offer a platform that you're ensuring that all the content that gets up there is suitable. So that's something that would be very important when you say the console makers, that if any console, doesn't matter who it is, allows you to buy a game on its online store, and that game has an age rating of 15 and someone plays it and it's horrifically violent and it should be an 18's game or whatever it is, you can debate about whether or not, well, I was okay seeing that and I was only 8. Well, okay, but the age rating board in your country has said this. So we have a little bit of a challenge as a maturity industry, that if we look at Germany, a lot of games can't have reference to Nazis because they have a law in place that doesn't allow you to idolize Nazis. I can totally see why Germany has that. But they also don't allow bloody and gory games. So a lot of games that came out when I was a teenager, like Carmageddon, you had to drive a car and cross people. I did not play the game, but I remember it because it was in the gaming magazines a lot. And in Germany, the blood was colored in green. Now, it was a small change for a developer to make. But the reason they made it was Carmageddon was against zombies in Germany and against real life people everywhere else. Now, I can see the technical solution to that problem, but it's a bigger problem if you think about it. You know, if your game output, and there was another game called Postal, I believe, where you played a postal.
Yeah.
Crazy. I haven't played it, but you can see there's hysteria about these games. And hysteria and, you know, the responsibilities of the platform providers, you know, we have to be very aware that if you put out a game that's going to cause a public outcry, it's easy for Xbox and Sony and PlayStation and Nintendo to say, well, we didn't make that game, we're just letting these guys sell it. But you have a responsibility to make sure that you don't allow people to buy games which are offensive or hurtful for the laws of that country. So that's right now a very complex thing to do, because if you're a game developer and you publish a game on any of these platforms, you can click a button saying, make this available in every country. And I want all the money. And then they will say, well, have you certified it in every country? And you have to be able to prove an awful lot of things. So there's a barrier in the industry which isn't necessary, but it's also sometimes artificial. In that people will come along and say, I heard you could do this horrible thing in Grand Theft Auto. Now, as a game player and as a game developer, I know that's not true. You cannot do that.
Yeah.
Not in the actual game or in any add-ons or anything like that. It's just,
or it's just missing context.
Yeah, but they absolutely believe it. And you can say, have you ever played a game? Absolutely not. What do I look like? A child? Yeah, okay. So you believe the children are playing this game, but you know nothing about it. It's hysteria again. But we're, as a company, affected by that because it's our job to make sure that people's perception, if you work in marketing and if you work in QA and if you work in all of these different roles and legal, that you're not putting out things that's going to get you sued for providing access to minors that you shouldn't. And it's a very tough area because you can play a game online on a console and you set up an account for a child and you don't click that child's age, you lie about their age, and it doesn't check with the parents to make sure that they're allowed to play a particular game. You know, the console has no way of saying, no, you're actually 8, you can't play this game. That would be an amazing feature, and we, you know, could build that feature, but lots of parents would send us angry emails saying, you're after saying my 8-year-old can't play Grand Theft Auto 5, it's his favorite game.
Yeah.
You do a better parent is not a response you can give.
Oh, yeah, that's just it. Yeah, and even going into GameStop, you know, there's always those sorts of kids who go up, try and buy Grand Theft Auto, and their parent is right there, and
and depending
not sell to the parent.
I've only seen it once, but I saw a child trying to buy, and it was a wrestling sort of anthology, Conor McGregor type thing. Apparently, there's an age rating on them. Again, I'm not really sure what it was, but it was WW something, and the kid was trying to buy it with his communion money, and the granny, who I assume it was the granny or grandma, gave dog's abuse to the poor boy because he said, sorry, you can't buy this because it's an 18's thing. And she sent the child out of the shop and bought it herself. and the employee had to sell it to her full well knowing she was buying it for him. But, you know, the employee has a job to do, and it's very unfair to treat him like that. I don't understand how people think they can get away with that, but I've only seen it once, but I believe it happens a lot, that, you know, games that are inappropriate are bought. Now, there's something about an uncle who doesn't have kids himself and is kind of clueless about what's appropriate, just buys the game because the kid said it was cool and gives it to them as a present. Okay, that's going to happen, okay? It's up to parents to be responsible and say that's not suitable. It's another thing to come in and say, I know it's not suitable, I'm buying it anyway, and I'm going to give you grief about it. Well, I don't know what's wrong with people, but, you know, that is one of those things. There's a long list of keeping in my bag.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Okay.
I hope this isn't too contentious question to ask, but regarding the censorship of you know, content like that, how do you feel about the potential sort of censorship of developers? So rather than the content of the game, but the content of how a developer acts or feels online. I think there was a game The Last Night recently. I'm pretty sure it's actually being published by Microsoft. And the creator got some flack for ideas that he had behind the creation of the game rather than what's actually in it. Do you worry about censorship of developers rather than content?
Well, not really, and I don't know the details of that at all. I hadn't actually heard that one. But look at it this way, where it's an amazing industry where the only thing stopping you having your say, be it as a developer, writer, podcaster, music producer, is electricity and internet. You can find a forum to publish whatever you want, no matter how vile, repulsive, demented, deranged, or illegal it is. You might get fired by whoever pays you. You might be vilified in the press. You might be hounded out of your town or village by people with pitchforks. But you can still publish it. You might be popular, but we're in an amazing time in technology where the barrier to entry is so low. It used to be if you wanted to write a book, you had to know a guy called Gutenberg and he had to lend you his press. Nowadays, you can publish anything. Now, is it a good idea? No. You need to have a very careful analysis of the role you are in, the position of authority you are in, and whether or not you want to lose your job for saying what you feel. Now, if you go out and publish something which is offensive, and you know it's going to be offensive, and you get hounded for it, well, you knew it was going to be offensive, and you took that risk anyway. I do feel sorry for certain people. There was a scientist who went on TV to celebrate landing on a meteor, I think it was, or a comet, and it was an amazing thing. And he wore a shirt which had been designed by a friend of his who was a shirt designer, apparently. And it had sort of 40s style art, pin-up style pictures of women in I can't remember what clothing they were wearing, but it was offensive to some people, and he had to go on and apologise for that. And there was an outcry, and it completely shadowed the success of the scientific mission. Now, I think he made a silly mistake, which was not intentional and didn't overly hurt anyone. But of course, because he appeared on the media as a spokesperson, it was too late. It was offensive to people, and people brought it to his attention, and it caused a problem. I feel a little bit more sympathy for him than for someone who purposely goes out and makes an offensive statement, which is happening with a developer I know at the moment, who is on Twitter saying the most outrageous things that I would never agree with, and I don't think any reasonable person would agree with, but they get away with saying them, and now they're ostracized, and no one will talk to them, and they can't understand why. And I think you have to understand that, you know, developers may be censored by their manager who says, oh my God, you can't do that, or you can't think that way. But if you do, you can't go on Twitter and say it, or Facebook, or whatever. If you can't live with that censorship, then that's fine, but you can't take a paycheck from them as well. So you have to decide which one's more important. And I think it's censorship with a small c. I don't think that there, or at least I haven't seen anyone saying, I really wanted to put this in my game, but they thought it would look bad to public perception, so I'm not allowed. I mean, games often revel in how outrageous and offensive they are, but in a comical way. Whereas if you are writing a game during the day and then going online saying, you know, my game is secretly about, you know, Nazis and exterminating, you know, Jews. Well then, sorry, it doesn't matter what your game is about. You went on and you publicly said that. I find that highly offensive. And if that person gets fired, you have to say, did they not realize they would get fired for that? And I think that censorship is probably mostly self-censorship. If you really believe those things, then maybe publishing games about it is something you do with your own money, not with someone else's.
Sure.
Hi, Stephen. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I have a bit of a different question for you. How important do you think is the LinkedIn community for designers and technologists?
Well, I will preface this by saying I don't know much about being a designer because I've never been one. Okay. And I would say in general, it is LinkedIn, and I'm not saying this because we bought LinkedIn, but I'm saying I own LinkedIn. But LinkedIn in general is only of value if you want to have a job. If you never want to have a job, you don't need LinkedIn. If you do want to have a job, it would be very hard for me to hire anybody who did not have LinkedIn. I don't know how I would do it. However, a lot more people have bad LinkedIn accounts than have good LinkedIn accounts. So I do a talk on how to do a proper LinkedIn account. I'm still learning how to do it properly, but if you look at the LinkedIn account I have, you'll see that I structured in a certain way with certain aspects. And that is designed to make people aware of the things that are important to me and the things that hopefully are important to them. So what I would say is that LinkedIn is important, not necessarily to be posting on it, though certain marketing roles you should, but you should treat it as a diary and portfolio of the good work you did in college. If I asked you to tell me about the projects you did in first year, you'd probably find it hard to tell me. But it was only a few years ago. And if you ask me what projects I did 3 or 4 years ago, I can't remember either. But I can because I kept them on LinkedIn. If you don't do that, then it gets very, very, very hard to produce a portfolio on demand. So someday you're being interviewed by me or one of my colleagues, I'm going to say something to you like, have you done any interesting projects on designing characters for this type of game? And you'll say, oh, I've done loads of that. And show me. And you might show me some artwork, but I don't mean artwork. I mean, what was the process? Did you work in a team? You know, what was the result? Did you produce a game, or was it, you know, I have a lot of different things. So you can think about this as in, can you prove to me that you are a person who's done a lot of interesting projects? Now, I believe you've done them, but can you prove it to me? Having an online portfolio for an artist is a no-brainer. For a software developer, it's GitHub. For everyone else, it's LinkedIn. So it's no harm having whatever your online portfolio is. Last time I went down to Turles, I asked them what they used, and someone said DeviantArt, and everyone told me no one would use that. So I don't know what an online artist uses, but whatever it is, use it if you're developing GitHub, and if you're doing that, that's excellent. But you also need LinkedIn, which frames the type of individual you are and the type of projects you're interested in. Because when I'm hiring you, I'm not going to read your CV. I'm sorry. I'm going to read your LinkedIn profile.
Okay, Stephen, we're at the end of the time that you had available, so I'm just wondering, do you want to? Do you want to add anything to the group, because we're at 2 more minutes to launching wherever you're going next, and I do appreciate the guys who are listening with their mutes on that you have good content. Any last comments, Stephen?
No, I don't have any comments. I hope I've answered all the questions people had.
Okay, well, thanks, Stephen. I'm going to end the session here, and for the guys who weren't here, there's an audio clip I'll have to kind of share. I do appreciate, Stephen, thanks for wading in, sharing your dash cam with us. the pass through the ground floor and up.